Hey everyone, today we're diving into something huge, the incredible power of natural disasters. But we're also going to explore a really surprising and frankly crucial connection they have to our warming planet. So let's get right into it.
And I want to kick things off with a big question, one that's really at the heart of our whole conversation. In this day and age, are natural disasters, well, are they still 100% natural? Let's find out.
Okay, first things first, let's talk about nature's raw power. We need to get a real handle on the immense forces that have been shaping our world for, millions and millions of years, long before we ever showed up. So what do we even mean by a natural disaster? Well, the definition is pretty clear. It's any event that causes some serious damage or loss. But here's the key part. It happens purely through natural processes. In other words, without us humans getting directly involved.
To really get this, let's take a look at the anatomy of a disaster. We're going to break it down and look at two different types, one from the atmosphere, the cyclone, and one from deep within the earth, the earthquake.
Let's start with the true force of nature, a monster born from the heat and moisture of the ocean, the cyclone. Now, you might call it a hurricane or a typhoon, it just depends where you are in the world. But the science behind how it forms, it's all the same.
Now, when you look at it like this, the process seems pretty simple, right? It all kicks off when a pocket of low air pressure forms over the ocean. That creates what's called a depression. And if the conditions are just right, that system can get stronger, start to spin, and boom, it grows into a full-blown cyclone.
But, and this is important, it can't just happen anywhere. A cyclone is kind of like a recipe with 4 essential ingredients. First, you need a massive stretch of really warm ocean water. We're talking at least 27 degrees Celsius. Then you need warm, moist air to rise up. That's convection. You also need crazy high humidity. And finally, you need to be near the equator for that spinning force, but not right on it. That's why these storms only form in very specific parts of the world.
And this is just incredible. The paradox that exists right in the middle of the storm. The eye, its very center, is just calm. Almost no wind, no rain, nothing. But right around it, you've got the eye wall, which is the most violent, destructive part of the whole thing, with insane winds and biblical amounts of rain. It's literally like the perfectly still center of a furiously spinning top.
Okay, so we've looked at the sky. Now let's shift our focus to the very ground we're standing on and talk about earthquakes. So what is an earthquake? At its core, it's a sudden, violent jolt of the Earth's surface, and it's caused by a massive, sudden release of energy that's been stored up inside the planet's crust. Seriously, think of it like stretching a rubber band tighter and tighter until it finally, violently snaps.
And all that stored up energy, it comes from the movement of tectonic plates, these giant, slow-moving puzzle pieces that make up the surface of the Earth. They can interact in 3 basic ways. They can pull apart, smash into each other, or slide right past each other. It's at those slip borders where huge amounts of energy can get locked up and then, all at once, get released as an earthquake.
So where does an earthquake actually begin? Well, the focus is the spot deep underground where the rock actually breaks and all that energy is let go. Then, the epicenter is the point on the surface directly above it. That's why the shaking is usually the absolute worst right at the epicenter. So we have these two incredibly powerful, totally natural processes. But this is where their stories split. See, while earthquakes are driven by forces deep inside the Earth, the story for atmospheric disasters, well, it's being rewritten by what's happening up here on the surface. And that brings us to the whole point of this explainer, the global warming link.
Let's just look at the data for cyclones for a minute. What the records show us is a really worrying trend. If we use 1850 as our starting point, we see a steady climb in how often they happen all through the 20th century. By 2015, there's a huge, noticeable increase all over the world. The numbers are clearly telling us something has changed.
So what's going on? What's driving this increase? What's pumping more energy into these storms? Well, think about that warm ocean water we talked about. It's like high-octane fuel for a cyclone. The warmer the water, the more powerful the storm can become. And the science all points to our atmosphere for the answer.
And that answer is the greenhouse effect. Now, this is really crucial to understand. This effect is a natural and totally necessary thing. We have gases in our atmosphere that trap some of the sun's heat, and that keeps our planet warm enough for us to live. The problem, global warming, happens when an excess of these gases trap too much heat. It's like our planet's blanket has just gotten way, way too thick.
So where are all these extra gases coming from? This chart gives us a pretty good breakdown. You can see the biggest slice of the pie is carbon dioxide, which mostly comes from burning fossil fuels. Then you have methane from places like garbage dumps, and even CFCs from things like old refrigerators. They all add to that thickening blanket, trapping more heat and warming our oceans, which, remember, is the fuel for cyclones.
Okay, so understanding the problem is step one, but it can't be the last step. This brings us to the most important part of our whole chat, our planet, our part. How do we go from just knowing about the problem to actually being the solution?
Well, the source material actually lays out 5 really clear steps, things we can all do, like forestation, planting trees, taking public transport more to cut down emissions, eating local, plant-based foods which have a much smaller carbon footprint, just being smarter about how we use electricity, and maybe the biggest one of all, just reducing how much stuff we consume and trying to live a simpler life.
It's so easy to think, what can I possibly do? I'm just one person. But that really misses the whole point. The quote says it all. Our individual actions, when multiplied by millions, can create significant positive change for our planet. It's all about what we do together.
And that brings us full circle. We've seen the incredible raw power of nature. So the question that we're left with is this. Nature has shown us its power. What are we going to show it in return?